Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Amy Stell. We're excited today to have Julie Leveque with us. She is the Senior Associate Athletic Director at UTEP, as well as the Senior Women's Administrator. Good afternoon.
Hi, Amy. Dr. Stell, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Let's start off with just a short bio, and then we'll get into some of the questions that the students really would like to have answers to.
Okay, yeah. So just to start off, let's see. I was a student athlete. I'll go that far back. I was a student athlete, moved on to be a graduate assistant in my sport of track and field, then moved up to coaching, and I coached for 15 years, the sport of, I was head men's, women's track and field coach and head men's soccer coach. So I coached for 15 years at Division III. As well as teaching classes, being an assistant athletic director and senior women administrator at that level as well. And then now just reached my 10-year mark here at UTEP as a senior associate athletic director and senior women administrator. And just recently, deputy Title IX coordinator has been added to my title.
Of course, with no upgrade in pay, of course.
Correct.
Of course. Would it be college education if it wasn't? So did you always want to work in sports, or did you think you fell into it because you were an athlete?
Yes, so I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and applying to Cal Poly, you have to declare your major when you apply. And so at the time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was a young senior in high school. So when I started college, I was 17. Because my birthday was really late in the year. And so I didn't really know what I wanted to be, what I wanted to major in. And so my coach said, knowing you and, going through this recruiting process and getting to know you and your family, I think you should go into kinesiology and focus on teaching. And I was like, well, that sounds good. I think I can be a teacher. I like science and sport and everything. So I think I could be a teacher. That sounds good. So there I am focusing on being a teacher. I think it was my junior year. I had to teach in the middle school, and we had to go out there and teach a lesson. And I can't remember what my lesson was, but right then and there, I knew that it was not for me. And I didn't know what my alternatives were. I didn't think about anything. You couldn't change a major unless you had a certain GPA, and I was already a junior. So I just stuck it out. And I really didn't think about what I was going to do, since I don't want to do what I planned to do. And so being a student athlete, my coach had said to me, kind of like my senior year, he said, why don't you stay here and be a graduate assistant and work here at the track program? And I really actually didn't know what a graduate assistant was. But I said, sure. I stayed there. Plus I was still training. So he said, I can still coach you. You could be a graduate assistant here and, learn what we do and help us in the office. And I was like, great, that sounds awesome. I love track. I'm going to still be around track. So it was great. So I did my master's in kinesiology with a concentration in human movement and sport, which was more like biomechanics, and then working in the track office. And then sure enough, my coach said, why don't you start applying for coaching jobs? You would be a great coach. And I was like, what? I didn't even think.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even think that was a career, or should I, and I just didn't know. And so he's the one who pushed me into that. And since I worked in the office, I was getting the mail.
Mm-hmm.
And I would see all these, because this is, I think, before a lot of digital, social
Mm-hmm.
media and emailing and all this stuff was very big. We used to send out letters and everything. So we'd get job advertisements in the mail. They'd be flyers in like an envelope, and you
Mm-hmm.
open it. And that's how I got into coaching. It was my coach pretty much put me into it, and that was it.
So the rest is history.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that you need to have a graduate degree in what you do? I mean, do you need to have a master's degree in order to advance in the athletic world, especially at the collegiate level?
It is not required. So when you see descriptions, it doesn't say master's required. It says master's preferred. And now I think nowadays everybody has a bachelor's degree. And so you pretty much need a master's degree, I think, if you want to be competitive to do better than someone else. But it's usually not required. Now, when I was at the school before I was here, was Caltech, I was actually teaching classes there. And I think that was required to be able to teach those classes. And that's why I think I got that job, is because I could also teach, because that was a requirement for all the coaches. So they all had master's degrees. But my current job, it doesn't say master's required. It's just master's preferred. And a lot of people are even, everyone has bachelor's degrees. Almost people are all now getting master's degrees. So, it's important to get your master's degree to be competitive. And so
what if you had somebody who walked in who had a lot of experience over someone with no experience in a master's degree? Which way do you think that you would lean?
I would probably lean towards the experience. I think that's really important because you're already a step ahead, a lot. So I would do the experience over the master's.
But given someone who had the same amount of experience and same perhaps diversity of experience, and someone who has a master's and someone who doesn't, you would take the master's degree with the experience every time.
Correct.
Yeah, understandable. So what steps do you think you took to get the job at D3? And what steps do you think you took the job to get at UTEP?
Well, I talked about my steps for my D3 job. It was also creating a resume, which I was nervous because my resume had really nothing on it, getting that job except graduate assistant, former student athlete. And then I coached for years, several summer camps in soccer, because I was a soccer player and I loved soccer. So I always stayed and worked all these camps all in the summer to make extra money. So that's those are the steps, along with my coach encouraging me to apply for those jobs. But getting a resume, getting an outfit, my first official suit, getting a resume, and then just I remember just practicing a couple questions, like, tell us about yourself, what do you know about the sport? I was really unprepared, but somehow I ended up getting the job. I don't know. And but it's a lot different now. When I got my job at UTEP, it was definitely networking, definitely prepared me for this job. It's like the people who I knew, then also investing in myself. So I went to NACDA. It was in Dallas. I had to pay for it on my own. The school, Caltech, didn't pay for it. And so I was like, I don't care. I'm going. I need to go meet people. I need to talk. And that's when I was trying to get a full-time administrator job and get out of coaching. So I invested in myself. I had everything ready. I had my resume. I had my background. I had my outfits. I was ready that way. And then, of course, when I got there is when I put my networking into play. And hey, let's meet for coffee. I would try to meet everybody, and then that's how it happened for this job at UTEP.
And so when you were, I guess, at NACDA, that's how you found out that UTEP needed somebody, or you just met somebody along the way who knew?
Yeah, so I was friends with Chris Del Conte, who's the athletic director at Texas. But right at that time, he was at TCU. So I texted him. I said, hey, I know you're here at NACDA. It's in Dallas. You have to be here. Let's meet for coffee. I have a question. And my question to him was, how do I find a full-time administrator job after being a coach for so long? Like, what did he recommend? Like, how could I get into full-time athletic administration? And that's when he said, see that guy sitting over there. And so I look over there, and some guy sitting in a chair, and he said, he is the athletic director at UTEP. Do you want the job? Do you want to go, want me to introduce you to him? And I was like, yes. And then I was on my own after that. I had to give him my resume. I had to talk the talk. I had to tell him about my experience. I had to just show him that I was ready. I actually had to talk more about administration than I did about coaching, which was hard for me because I had been coaching for 15 years and I had to really stay focused on the administration part. But I think coaching helped me get the job also because I am a sport administrator.
Mhm.
And knowing coaches and knowing the sports and knowing how coaches think and why they do what they do was really helpful. And it was really important to, at the time, Bob, someone who knows, who's been a coach before. So, but yeah,
So does it
networking.
make sense? Does that jump from coaching, having a coaching background? For you, it made sense. Does it make sense for all administrators? Do you think all athletic directors or people in your position have that coaching background?
Mm-mm.
Do you think
No,
it's more beneficial if they do?
I think it is because they understand more. They understand the times of the year. They understand the reasoning, why coaches want to do what they want to do, as far as like just the little things, like the questions they ask, what they're trying to do, because they don't really think about budget as much. They think, I gotta get this, I gotta do this, we need this, we need that. And so the urgency of a coach, when they just think about stuff, the administrator might be like, wait, hold on. Well, no, the coach, is urgent for the coach. They have a competition coming up. I mean, it's just the timing of everything and just having that knowledge and then knowing how to deal with the student athletes. There's just a lot that coaches really understand, that if you weren't a coach, you probably wouldn't really fully understand. It would take you a while. Yes, you could learn probably, but it's easier just to talk the talk with somebody who's been a coach.
I think there's also probably it's beneficial because as a coach, you've worked with multiple athletes, multiple personalities, some athletes that have multiple personalities. And so it's easier to work in that environment because you know how to work with people if you've been a coach.
Right. Yeah.
And, if you've not been a coach before, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to learn how to deal with people and their personalities and how people fit into slots on a team, whether
Right.
it's a team in the office or a team on the field. So I've always thought that being a coach is quite important.
Plus the coaches that I oversee here, they're all different personalities too. And I understand where they're all coming from too, but in Division III, though, that's how I had that experience,
right,
because I got to coach and be an administrator. Here in Division I, I'm not sure if there are coaches who are also administrators. So
how would they find the time?
Right.
At the D1 level. Well,
Yeah.
you did mention networking and how you networked to get the UTEP job. So you obviously see the value in networking. I guess the question is, for someone coming right out of a graduate program, how do they network? Where can they start? What can they do?
I would say join the organizations that are relevant to your profession. So, for athletic administration, it's NACDA, Women Leader in College Sports. I would get on their emailing list so that you get the information of when these events that they offer are happening so that you can attend those. And then it's really, really important. And I know sometimes this is hard, but it's really, really important that when you go to these events, you have to talk to people. And sometimes it's uncomfortable to just walk up to someone you don't know and introduce yourself and ask them for a business card, or where are you? What school, do you work for? What's your job? Are you, compliance? Are you, you have to ask those questions, and it's really uncomfortable, but you have to start somewhere. You have to start making connections. And then if you know somebody that's there, ask them to introduce you to people. Like, hey, when we're walking around, will you introduce me? And just keep you just got to keep on that. That was probably one of the hardest things, is going to those events for the first time and not really knowing many people. But if you can find people who you know and ask them to introduce you to people who they know, or at night when they have those social events and the bars and the receptions and this, you really need to make an effort to talk to and introduce yourself to anybody. And then when you collect cards or you exchange phone numbers or however you're going to do it, you got to keep in touch with those people. You can't just meet them and then, that's it. You really, really have to make an effort. And the longer you're in it, it does get easier, but I'm still doing that. I still go to these events and talking to people, I'm like kind of tag along because I want to meet a different group or a different conference or different jobs, people, because also, I'm looking for, my goal is to eventually be an athletic director. So then I'm also looking around and wanting to meet people of maybe potential people who I'd want to be on my team, who I might hire. I might be like, wow, he or she was sharp, like their compliance. Wow. They're looking for jobs. They want to be a senior. If I ever get a job, that's someone who I would maybe connect. Or if someone came to me and said, Julie, do you know anybody? I'm looking for someone in compliance. And I'm like, you know what? I just met this person at NACDA. They were so good and they're actually looking for a job. You might want to contact them. Here's their number. And so in many different ways, it's really important.
We used to work together, and for those of you who don't know this, Julie and I worked together. But it was interesting because there'd be people in our office who would walk around and talk to people and visit. And there were some people who looked down their noses at that, oh, they're not working. And others who understood the value of relationships within the office, because in the athletic world, there's movement all the time. Every 2 to 3 years, someone is moving and going to a different school, to a different division, to a higher level, someplace. And so the importance of even networking within your own university is quite valuable, especially if it's your first job, because those people will move on. No athletic department is static. So
yeah, and your coworkers might be getting calls from people who they know at other schools who are looking for people to hire. And so if you create relationships within your department and you work with people well, and you're going to get recommended. So networking is really, really important on all different all different levels.
So who or what, I mean, you've mentioned your collegiate coach, you mentioned the fact that you were an athlete, your D3 experience, now your D1 experience, but what do you think, who or what has been the key to your success? What do you think?
Well, I think there's two, besides all the things I mentioned, there's two really important parts. So number one, I think as a student athlete, what I learned, my time management and my ability to juggle so many things. I was a track athlete. I did the heptathlon, which is it was just 7 events. And I trained for those 7 events. And I really believe that switching from one event to another event and like having to change my mindset, I go from being a 100-meter hurdler for an hour in practice, then going over to be a shot putter, and then going over to, be a sprinter with the sprinters, and like having to change my thought processes, my like who I am, like my attitude. I think that really had a lot to do with me being able to do so many different things. And it just helped me. I mean, I still get questions, Julie, how do you do all this? And I'm like, it's kind of normal to me. Like, it's normal to do that. So I think being a student athlete, or even just if you were not a student athlete, if you were busy and you can do all these things, you can manage this, you can manage that, and it prepares you for life, like down the road, because life's never going to really stop and it's going to get hectic and crazy all the time. So being a good time manager and balancing all those things and being able to do it and be good while you're doing all the different things. And then I think my husband He is very supportive because college athletics is a lot of time outside the 8 to 5 time. It's nights, weekends. So if you have a partner who is super supportive, who understands athletics, it makes the job a lot easier. And but I will sometimes say, though, sometimes it gets a little crazy when I get home and he wants to keep talking sports. And I'm like, stop. I don't want to, I need a break. But it is helpful to have somebody who understands who you're living with or who you're friends with, who understand your work schedule and what you do and how athletics works. It's
how we plan our vacations around football season, basketball season, track season.
I'm telling you, my only time for vacation is like June or July. And I mean, all the time, do you think you want to go somewhere in February on a snow skiing trip? I'm like, no,
Basketball.
sorry, I can't. Yeah. So yeah, someone who's super understanding, and who can help you and motivate you and really appreciate what you do and be excited, because it is hard. So
one last question.
Those are two that are really have been, I think, how I've been able to be where I am today.
So do you have any relevant advice for anyone entering the sports world as a career, someone who's coming out of a graduate school program, besides the networking?
Yeah, well, I was going to say networking. I was get involved and invest in yourself. Schools aren't always going to pay for your professional development, or your job isn't going to always pay for your professional development. You got to seek out, if you have a hard time financially affording it, there's a lot of like scholarship opportunities, especially for people just getting into the business who are new. Seek out the organizations that offer, scholarships to help you get to these events so that you can learn and network. So yeah, invest in yourself. I would also say one thing that I do, I've probably been doing it the last 5 years, is I've invested in a consultant who has helped me prepare for interview questions. She's also critiqued and reviewed my resume to make sure that it's as sharp as possible and precise as possible. So investing in those I know it costs a lot of money, but gosh, it's worth it. I've been a finalist in a few AD jobs, and I think it's because of her, who she's really helped, but again, it does cost money and you have to invest in yourself.
And if you were looking back, one piece of advice you would give the younger Julie who was just starting out in D3, what would you say to her?
Do more fundraising. Because I went the coaching route. Division III, they don't really do a huge amount of fundraising, and I'm coaching, right? And I'm an administrator, but the administration I did was like sports information, compliance, game management, facilities. It wasn't so much the fundraising. So it's one kind of if you want a lot of experience in all different areas, find a Division III school that will allow you to do any and all jobs that you want to do, but find one that definitely has fundraising. Because where I was, they didn't even like you to fundraise, because Caltech was part of Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which was part of NASA. And you couldn't really do a lot except reach out to alumni. There wasn't any corporate fundraising or donor, like big time donors, because it was just the type of school. And
it is a skill.
Yeah. So it's something you need to learn. I wish I would have known about it earlier. Like I didn't really know about that at all. And so I'm always behind on that area, but I'm catching up.
All right. Well, we
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for speaking with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Sal.